Happy Monday, hotties. I feel like we never do anything on a Monday. I'm always a Tuesday gal, but I wanted to break it up and do something different this time. So, especially if you are doing Cyber Monday campaigns, thank you for taking the time to join me. I think we just get into it, and then I'll just let people in as they arrive. I've got some hot little slides that we are going to go over today. How, there we go. How it's going to work is at the start, I've kind of got some concepts and some things to talk about. And then as we probably get through the first half an hour, then we're going to be doing some writing. So if you are wandering around doing things, perfect. Probably around like the 10:30 mark, if you could make your way back to your computer. And I will say as well, when we do the writing, you can write it on pen and paper or you can write it on your computer. There may be a perk, which I'll reveal at the end, to writing it on your computer, but don't stress if you are like, no, I am pen to paper. I cannot think any other way. You're going to be fine. You're probably like, what is she doing? What's she planning? You're just going to have to wait and see. I'm terrible at being mysterious, but I was like, today is the day that we obviously practice that. So thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited about this. And it's really interesting because we've obviously come off the back of Give Good Email launch and a lot of live events. And normally I wouldn't do something that was like so close to a launch finishing. And I feel like that this so much came from me looking and responding and seeing to like a lot of things online of, and we're all probably seeing it now, where it's like, have your 7-figure year, do this, do that. And how I think probably from now until February, we're going to be really hit with like a lot of onslaught of stuff that speaks to where we want to be, right? Because you may be like, we 100% want to be a 7-figure business, or I am looking to 20K months, or I, am just even looking to transition out of working in a salary and making my side hustle my full-time job. And one thing that I've realized working with hundreds of clients is that you can have the sexiest plan, right? It's actually like on paper to make $1 million quite simple. If we're looking at Give Good Email, we divide $1 million by 3,300, and that's how many I have to sell. But we deep down know that it's actually not that simple, because there is so much more at play when it comes to business growth. And something, if you've worked with me, that I do with all of my clients is we actually look at the standards that you have for yourself, but we also look at the standards that you have for your business. And this is basically like your rule book on how you live, and it gives you the life and the business that you have today. And what I love about this is that you just need to make small little shifts with your standards, and you will like orient yourself in the direction that you want to head. And that, especially if you're like, I am desiring this business growth or whatever it may be. I'm sure all of us are wanting business growth in some capacity. It may not be financial, it could be a different aspect. But this will make it happen with every single daily action, daily decision, and daily conversation that you have in your business. I'm definitely recording. Okay, amazing. I was like, imagine if we go through this, and I was like, shit. So each session that we're going to do builds upon the other. Today is all about you, which is so fun. And then tomorrow we actually look at your business and your business structure. So we look from real personal discovery to strategic business implementation. And today we look at establishing personal standards and an understanding of one's core identity. Doesn't that sound so fancy? Tastemaker DNA. I am having, I don't want to say a shift in my business, but it's so funny. I found myself recently getting super annoyed when people would say that I was the email chick. Peter could do your newsletters. And I felt myself low-key wanting to die. And it's so interesting that I feel like I've branded myself in such this beautiful way that people think of email and they are like, I'm their first thought, which is wonderful. But it really has felt a bit restrictive. I don't know if anyone in here has felt like that, where you can look at the spectrum of everything that you can do and everything that you offer. And it almost feels like that you've done this really good job, but you've kind of put yourself in like a little bit of a box, and it feels like restrictive. And that to me has felt like where I am currently. And I'm so excited to really grow my business into something even bigger. So I'm so there with you, which is so exciting. And everything that I have in store for 2025, one thing that includes is a business bank. Oh my God, everyone's coming in. Um, so this isn't going to be a sales event. Absolutely not. But I just want you to be aware that if you go through these next 2 days and you're like, I'm obsessed with her, I completely, like, I feel like this has actually been the missing piece in my business growth. There is a beautiful option that we can work together. I will include that in an email later. All right. One thing I'll say too is I always get praise and feedback with my brand, my website, how I show up, how I do things online. And I do believe that this is because everything that I do, I have a really high standard with. And I don't want anyone to think that high standards means perfection. We're probably going to go through this and there's probably going to be like 3 typos. But I have a high standard in the way of how I run my business, what I actually do, the work that I do, the clients that I work with, and a lot of stuff that really pushes me outside of my comfort zone. So a couple months ago, I ran a workshop for Sophia Amoruso in her business class offering. And it's so funny that I think people were like, oh my God, this is so brilliant. She asked you. And I was like, no, I just pitched. And I just sent an email and I kind of felt like I wanted to crap myself because, you know, it just felt something so big that I remember when she released this offering, I was like, I'm going to be a contributor in that. I remember seeing it and I had this like feeling that I was like, I'm going to be involved somehow. And I was always thinking about it. And then when I was hosting a lot of events, I was like, this is so good. I want to host this for Sophia. And I sent the most simple email. It was like 3 sentences. It was not fantastic. And her community manager wrote back within like a couple hours and they were like, we want to hear your ideas. And I wrote back and we had locked it in within like a 3-day period. And it's so funny that when that happened, I was talking to people and they were like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. And not to downplay the fact that it is brilliant. It's the fact that I have a standard for myself that for me, I'm like, this just feels so normal. Like when it happened, it was so bizarre. When it happened, I was like, this is amazing, but it doesn't feel like so out of reach. And I don't know if anyone has kind of had that before where you've done something, you've got a client, right? Or you have been asked to contribute and you're like, this feels amazing, but it actually feels like the table that I'm meant to sit at. Like it doesn't feel like I'm like a little kid and I'm sitting with the adults. Like I'm actually meant to be at that table. And I think for me, I can look back at my whole entrepreneurial timeline. What's this now? 16 fucking years. I feel like an entrepreneur geriatric. And I can look back at when I first started and the amount of times I really held myself back because I felt like that I was just this small little person. And let me tell you, working in a co-working space where there are some of the best brands that we have in Australia, like Who Gives a Crap, Shameless Podcast, Ultraviolet, Troy Sivan has his like the cosmetics, beauty and lifestyle company in this building. Like he's on the floor downstairs. Working among businesses like that has changed, I think, my I guess outlook and perception of, I regularly work with incredible founders that just second guess so much of themselves. And if there is one thing that I just want you to take away from today, is that everything that you went through this year and you're like, oh, I would love to do that. Or a client and you're like, oh, I would love to work with them. That you are like, no, I'm like meant to be there. Like I'm meant to be at that table. This is 100% for me. Because every single person, and I know pretty much all of you, every single person that is on this call is truly fantastic. And it's like, this is the time. And this is where we create a beautiful standard that now supports that next evolution in our business to happen. I feel the word standard can be perceived a number of different ways. I see it as a rule that I have for myself. Like this is just a standard. This is the average. Like if we are looking at my life, this is not so like out of reach. This is just something that I do every morning. It's like my standard is that I have a cup of coffee as soon as I wake up, right? And there are things that we can do in business and in our life that we should have standards for. A lot of people, I don't want to say they don't have them. I think that we have ideas of standards, but what actually then happens is the opposite of that. And then we start to have this disconnect where, and I don't know if I'm sure a couple of you have felt like this before, where you do something in the moment and then like a couple days or a couple hours later, you just feel really sick about it. And it could be something where you discount a service and then you just have like all of these regrets, and it's almost like this, it's like that feeling is like stuck on the whole experience, right? And for me, I used to do that a lot. I used to do things where I would really like go a lot over time with client sessions, and I felt really like it felt at the time like it made sense. But then I would look back and I would feel terrible and I would be so annoyed with myself. And I realized it was because, yes, it was amazing for the client, but I was like, really, I wasn't discounting my prices, but in a way I was, because I was so over delivering on what I was actually selling in the first place. We are going to do this towards the end of the workshop, probably in the last like half an hour, where you're going to actually decide some standards. I'm going to teach you a process as well of what I do with them. But the reason I bring this up is, I see online a lot. I've spoken about this before. I ran a workshop called, what was it? Timeless. It was all around timeless content and how we can open, I'm chronically online, obsessed with TikTok. I can open TikTok and I can look and see people unpacking like creators' accounts and why they've gone viral in their content. And this is so funny for me because I can look at the people that are creating the content and they're just so authentically themselves. And you can look back and how they've been doing this for such a long time. And sure, there has been this beautiful natural evolution to what they've done, but they are doing it in a way that it's so authentically and uniquely them. They're not probably being swayed by like a fucking algorithm or the fact that they should be like doing dances or using a trending audio, like whatever it is. And they have done it in a way that is obviously up to their standard. They have a standard around that. And then because of that, they are getting like the beautiful results from that. If you haven't already, I'm obsessed with Claude. I don't know if anyone in here has used Claude. I've tried Chat GPT, and Chat and I, we don't gel. Claude, obsessed. And I put my notes, I wrote like all the notes that I had for today's slides. I just put it into Claude. And I said, Claude, I want you to like tell me what you think a tastemaker is. Like just read my notes and reflect it back to me, which is something that I love to do as well. If you love human design and you're a manifesting generator, I feel like Chat and Claude is the best thing ever because you get to see your work reflected back to you. And I love this. It's like a tastemaker is not just a creator or an entrepreneur, but a cultural architect who sets new standards, challenges existing paradigms, creates ripple effects beyond their immediate work, and brings a unique perspective that reshapes how others think and operate. Obsessed. I loved how the first thing was it sets a new standard. And everything that I've been consuming and seeing online of late, it is very rigid in terms of do this, get that, create a marketing plan, go sell, get the results. But I think the problem is, and you've seen this online as well, I built $1 million business and I wanted to burn it down. And I have a visceral fucking hate for that because for me, I'm like, we have to remember that the process that we have in our business and how we make $1 million is how we will continue to make our next dollar and our next $1 million. And if we don't actually love how we've done that, we are not going to be happy, right? I feel as well that there is sometimes in business this real urgency of needing to get to like these certain goalposts. Like it could be that you are like, we just need to get to $30,000, like $30,000 a month. And then you get there and you're like, oh my God. And it's because I think at times when we do these things that go against the standards that we kind of have for ourselves and our business, we feel like that the cash almost makes up for the fuckery that we're dealing with. Has anyone felt like that before? Where it's like, you know what? This is all going to be worth it if I'm just happy to take home what? Like a nice fat 150K a year salary, some sexy dividends, we're like having a nice holiday. It's all going to be worth it, right? this used to be me with my Pilates studio in the first, I would say, 5 or 6 years. I had some clients that were fucking horrendous. And I look at how they treated me and how they treated my staff. I was also very young. Like, I opened this business when I was 20. I have had credit cards thrown at my face. Because I was so like young, and I think I was one of those 20-year-olds that looked like they should still be in high school. I would have people that I would, we would put out a newsletter, I'd make a decision, and they would go to my mum who worked for me being like, oh, are you really sure about how Peter's running her business? Like, this would happen on a weekly basis. I would be abused by clients. We would have so much bad debt. And that was like the first 5 years of my business. And it's really interesting that I can look back, and I was working with a business coach at the time that I think like they were good in terms of growth, and they were very much of the mentality that, you know what, you're going to deal with crap, so you may as well just get more money and then put staff in, and then the staff deal with shit. Do you know what happens to staff when they are dealing with shit? They just disengage completely, which fucks the brand's reputation. And then they just go and work for someone else. And then businesses are in this constant stage of just hiring and hiring and hiring. And you have this founder that still feels like they can't switch off because there's all of this stuff that's happening that people just accept as like part of business. It's really interesting when I decided to run this event. And I don't know if you do this, my brain is just like thinking about every standard. I have situations and stuff happening. And when I first started this professional babe consultancy, when was it? 2020. Bounce payments, 30% a month that I was dealing with, chasing people up, chasing money. And now this year, it's been less than 5. And when I mean less than 5, I don't mean 5%, I mean less than 5 payments for the whole year. And we have a lot of payment plans. And it's so interesting that I can look back and how I got advice when this was happening. They're like, cut payment plans, cut this. And for me now, we have a standard where I'm like, if you sign a payment plan, I expect that this is paid. And if not, that you're a fucking adult and that you have a conversation and that you come to me and then we're not chasing you for money. And I've had people in this space who are like, you can't say that. And I'm like, why? It's my business. Like, I'm not Coca-Cola. We don't have this like guide where I have to speak to people in a certain way and run things. This is my business. And if people don't like that, go and work for someone else that doesn't care. And when I tell people that we don't deal, I'm not chasing money. Like, this is not even a part, I don't even experience this anymore. And I truly believe it's because I have a standard, one, of how I run things, and then what I expect of my clients. And I've got a little bit of a reframe as well, especially if you feel like that stuff is happening and you're like, this is outside of my control, that you can start to actually hold this within yourself, and you will then see the effects reflect back in all of the experiences as well that you have with your clients. I do believe that any business that we look at, anyone, and we're like, oh, I love that, there is a standard that they have in place. And that is what we're actually really attracted to. This standard doesn't need to be perfection, okay? It could be like, if we love a creator on TikTok, their content may not be perfect, but that creator has a standard where they are like, I'm gonna be really consistent and I'm just gonna show up no matter what. And you're then seeing the result of their standard, and that could be the fact that they have 1 million followers. And it's because they just kept the standard where they're gonna continually like release content, right? I do believe that every single one of us has the ability to create something truly remarkable and have such a memorable business that outlives us. Something that I think about all the time is, it's like, long after I've closed or I've sold or gosh, I've died, not that I plan to live forever, but you know what I mean, is that how good does it feel that when you have been alive, that you have created something that people get to reference back? Like, that you've actually, like, you have distilled everything in here into something that people like, that was fucking amazing work. And that it's not something that's forgotten in 3 months. Because for me, it's like, I don't want to work and like put effort in for something that's just going to fall over that no one remembers. That just feels very off brand. And my goal is as well to give you the foundations for that today. I hear all the time that people feel sometimes reluctant to do this because they feel like it's very restrictive. so that if we have a standard for, let's just stick with clients, right? That if we have a standard for how we expect people to pay us, how they speak to us, the relationship that we have, I think that we think that we're not going to have any clients, okay? And that used to be me with my studio. I was like, well, I can't do this because I work with the general public. And if I have a price increase, they're going to like all this stuff. And yes, if you have people in your ecosystem that are completely against your standards, you are going to have a process and a period in your business where it's almost like everything's in a washing machine. And no, I don't want to say bad clients, but the people that are your old standards are going to go, and then it is going to make way for the new people to come in. And it's so interesting, and I apologize in advance. After having this conversation with all of you, you will be tested, I bet, and please let me know in the next 48 hours, where you'll probably have a client that just won't pay. Or you will have someone that comes back and they're just like, we just want a discount. Or you will have something that, you will have a standard, even if you're not conscious of it, that it pushes up against something and you're like, shit. And then you have to have a hard conversation, or you have to then hold that standard. Because where this work is very powerful is it's one thing to be like, well, I work with people that value me and my time. But then it's another thing to have a conversation that affirms that. Now, the most beautiful thing is that, standards are not restrictions. This is not something where you are cutting off everything that works for you. This is basically your framework and your rule book on how you live and how you live your life. And the standards that you currently have given you everything that you have today. All right. So this is where we get to rewrite the rule book and we get to make these changes so that if we go a year, 6 months into the future and we look at the business that we have and who we are, the standards that we've had have then given us the result that we've had, okay? So for anyone that feels as well like they are not creative, or that you go through periods and you're like, oh my God, my brain is just not working, or I just don't know how to innovate, or even at the moment, if you're like, oh my God, I can't believe everyone's thinking of 2025 and I'm just trying to get through today. If you put standards in place, you will find that a lot of the mental chatter and a lot of the fuzziness and inability to move forward will just completely disappear, because you will actually know who you are going to be and the business that you want, because you're not thinking about all of this stuff, right? I can look back at all these bounce payments, and even if I was consciously trying to not think about it, they would come up and I would be thinking about it. I'd be meditating, I would be thinking about it. I'd be at Pilates, I would be thinking about it. It would literally affect every single part of my life. And it's so hard to, I think, show up and create when we kind of have that happening for us as well, all right? I've said this, the standards that we have, or that we're maybe we have them, but we just don't follow through on them, have given us the life that we have right now. And if you desire something that is very different, if you want a 2025 that is so different to the year that you had, it starts with this. One of the worst things that we can do if we don't have standards or we're not conscious of them is to let people define them for us. And it's a dumb move to do this because most people have really low standards. The easiest way to look at this is look at who your friends date. I mean that in the most respectful way. This used to be me. I would get a guy that felt like he'd just come out of jail and he had a neck tat. I'm like, oh my God, so hot. I was like, if that man only has a fucking neck tattoo working for him, I need to kind of raise my standards a little bit. And I remember there was a guy, he was a bit of a dick, but I remember having this conversation with him. It was 10 years ago. I had moved into Newcastle. I was seeing this guy, and I feel like I had a theme of this. The day that I signed my lease and I moved in, he was just like, yeah, I don't want to see you anymore. And I remember being so upset. And a friend at the time, he said to me, you wouldn't be dealing with any of this shit if you actually had some higher standards. And at the time I was like, it felt like such a bitch slap because, you know, the man was very sexy, like this, the guy that I was seeing, gorgeous. But that's all he had working for him. And it's because I think for me at the time, I wasn't really, because I'd had bad experiences, and my friends as well were like, go for him, he's hot. We were kind of just feeding off each other. And I would look, like let people be like, you go and date him because he's really good for you. But the friend that was saying that would be with the boyfriend that kept cheating on them continually. And they were giving me advice on who I should date. Okay. And this was really interesting. And you'll notice this as well, that when you actually decide what is for you and what is like your standard. So, one for me is I put myself in rooms where I belong, meaning if there's like a networking event, or if we're in like our co-working space and I see groups of people talking and I want to go and talk to that group, I'll just go and talk. I'll just walk up and I'll talk to them. When you do that, you'll have people, especially if it's people in your life that are like, oh my God, you can't do that. And maybe that's something you've experienced before where you are like, oh, I want to move or do something a bit differently to how I've done it. And then all of a sudden you start getting pushback from people. Yeah, that's so fun. That's another thing that you're going to have to deal with with this. But it's so fucking amazing because the cool thing is that I feel like, especially with your friends and your family, my mum, I do this with her all the time. When they raise their standards, the cool thing is that when you have like a momentary dip, when you want to go back against something, they then hold you to that. So you may be going through a period where you're like, oh my gosh, everyone around me is kind of just like trying to define them for me. But the more that I hold myself, the more that I get to be a beautiful example of how I can live an incredible life and have an incredible business. And then they get to like raise their standards as well. One thing I want you all to think about is if we don't have standards, or if we feel like that we don't really have like firm boundaries in how we do things. So maybe you get a client and they reschedule 3 times. Maybe you have in your terms and conditions that you only do like 2 rewrites and you're onto your 10th. Maybe they've just been going to pay you for a week, right? Whatever it is. I want you to think about what that's actually costing you. And I want you to think about what it's costing your business. And I want you to then think about how, if you're anything like me, if I'm dealing with stuff continually, if I'm dealing with the same stuff that I am now, and then I'm dealing with the same stuff in February, it's not the same stuff because I have all of the baggage and all of the emotional feelings and anger because I've been dealing this with 3 fucking months. And then February comes and I'm still dealing with the same shit. And it's like I may have been a bit more lenient and relaxed at the start, but then as we get to February, I'm fucking done. And then you see this online, people want to blow up their business, mass discounts. Once you master this work, you will open Instagram, and how you view things, it will be very different because you'll be like, I feel that this decision has been fueled by something that's happened in your business. Really like reactive thinking. And I can see this where I have done stuff and I've been like, shit, you know, me having a low standard of one of them was I used to take forever to get back to people with proposals. I'd be like, oh, I'm bad with email. No, I'm not. I just have a really low standard that it takes me like freaking 7 business days to write back to someone. What happened was I would lose clients and they would go to my competitor. That felt terrible. So, and that also had a financial cost to my business where it's like, I don't want to have bill stress because of something that I've done that I just assume is this random character trait of mine. It's not. This is confronting work at times. But the cool thing is, guys, when you master this, you will just be so happy, hot, and unbothered because this almost becomes part of your DNA where you don't have to think anymore. You look at something and you're like, hard no, and then you just move on. You're like, below my standard, I'm not going to deal with that. And you'll start, this will just get so easy the more that you do it. It's like a muscle, okay? Now, this is something that I love to do. Radical concept, very fun, try it on. What you actually desire, you can actually make a standard for yourself. So if you are not currently receiving this in your business or in your personal life, you can still be giving this in other ways. Because when you do this, it does create a generative, forward moving energy. What I mean by this is whenever I want something in my business and it's not happening, I ask myself, what are some small things that I could do? So this used to be a thing for me where I would open Facebook groups and I felt like that no one was ever promoting me because I didn't really have like a lot of clients at the time. I was like, great, I'm going to, if I hear someone, I'm just going to be like, you need to go and work with so and so. Go and work with them. And then I would go and contact that person and be like, hey, just heads up, I was just talking about you to my friend Rob. He's really in the market for like an amazing creative agency. I really hope he reaches out because you're the best at what you do. That is like 30 seconds worth of work. But if you do that enough and this becomes a standard, the cool thing is people will just start to model that, right? It's like where the whole body language thing, where if you're sitting across from someone and you cross your arms, how often do you notice that they actually do the same as well? And you will find that when you start to do this and you have this as a standard, and all of the things that you want, you're like, well, if I want this, I'm going to make this a standard in my life and my business. People will start to do the same and it will just happen. I opened my inbox today and I've got another speaking event. I'm actually randomly now locking in one a day of either presenting in someone's group, going on someone's podcast, or being a speaker at an event. Wild. And I truly believe this is because when it was very hard for me and I felt like that stuff wasn't happening, I had a standard of, I will always shout out the best person for the job because I wanted to be shouted out as the best person for the job. So I had a standard where if that was me, I would shout out me. If that was someone else, I would shout them out. And this was a 15-minute thing that I had in my diary every single day where I would look at Facebook groups and I would just put in there the person that I thought would be perfect for them. So if you feel like that stuff is stuck and that opportunities aren't coming, that is something that is just so game changing to do. So now we're going to explore you. I'm so excited. Hopefully you are as well. What I want you to do is get some writing material. You can write it on your phone. You can get some pen and paper. You can write it on your computer. Whatever you want to do. All right. What I want you to think about is as we go through this, I don't want you to think too much about it. I just want you to be like, the first thought that comes up, we're just going to write some stuff down. And it's okay if on the page it looks messy. That's all right. Because whatever your first thought is it's powerful to just get it out, put it on the paper and be like, oh, okay, isn't that interesting that I think that? Isn't that interesting that, Peter asked me this question and that was like the first thought that I had, all right? And just write as much as you can and try to make it exhaustive. So what I've done, I'll just show you quickly. I'm going to ask you some questions and it's like, what do I believe are my core talents? I don't want you to be like writing and then go on to the next question. Like, come up with, and maybe this is you being like, right, I'm going to come up with 15 answers for every single one. So you've got 5 questions here. I'm going to mute myself. You got to write 15 points for each in 3 minutes. Your work is cut out for you. What do I believe are my core talents? Forget about what you're even selling at the moment, right? Just forget about everything. Right now, you right now, what are your core talents? What do I love in life and business? What do I truly believe in? What seemingly unconnected experiences actually shaped my unique approach? Maybe this is you thinking back to points in time, right? Maybe this is you thinking back to, oh, I had this client conversation and I decided to do this. You mightn't get 15 for that one. That's okay. That's probably going to take a little bit more brain power. And then what talents have I overlooked or undervalued that truly make me unique? Forget about what people are paying for you for, right? I just want you to think about you. We're going to take 3 minutes just writing. And if you can for the top 3, I would love you to come up with 15 for each. And then with the last 2, try to come up with like 2 good points at a minimum. 5 would be ideal. I'm going to mute myself. You got 3 minutes. I forgot to put a timer on. How are we going? Are we still writing? Yep, okay. Keep writing. I'm just gonna go and oh, I'll wait till the next slot. I was like, I'll fill my water up. I'll give you another we'll do another minute or two. How are we going? Are we good? Okay. Why don't we take a screenshot of this and then because I know some of you are probably like, I need 20 minutes. Some of you are like, I already banged it out. And then there are going to be some of you who are like, I need to think about this for the next 48 hours. So just take a screenshot, come back to this. Why I'm asking you these questions is so interesting, especially if you have parents or friends that have businesses. They will tell you, you're really good at that. You should go and get paid for that. But it's not necessarily like what you actually want to do. I had this with Pilates where people just assumed that all I could do was teach a Pilates class. And when I was like, I'm done, they were like, what do you mean? You're Peter Pilates. And, we don't want to ever fall into a trap where it's like we're doing things because, we're actually very good at that, but we don't truly love that, right? Um, as I've said this before, you could be amazing at hand jobs. You don't have to make a business out of it. That can just be something that you do on the side or in your personal life. And that's a good thing for you to think about, right? Is this just a hand job? Do I have to do this? Like, I could do that. Do I want to do that as my business? So always come back to you. And this was something that I said to my wonderful Sharon, my CFO, once, where she was like, I was really struggling. She was struggling with what to post in her content. And I said, well, the thing is, you're a personal brand. And I said, so whatever you talk about personally is going to be, and it's on brand, is good. And I said, so you can just start your day, if you want to post every day, with what do I believe in right now? And I said, you'll be really surprised with stuff that comes up because you're not going to be influenced, oh, I should be talking about that. And I said, because all the little things will bubble up where this is actually what you really want to do. So that's something really nice to just reflect on, like daily, if you can. So we have got some more questions. I'm going to give you the hand cramp. I'm going to give you about like 5 minutes for this one. I'm going to go fill my water up. So I want you now to think about, you can think about this in a couple ways. You can think about if you love your business and you love everything that's kind of happening, I want you to think about the clients that you have, but you also can think about what you could be doing, right? So it's like if this isn't a service that you're offering or something that you're doing, I want you to kind of like future think and be like, what could I do? Like if I did this, like what would the transformation be? You're going to think of three things. I want you to come up with ideally 15 for each. What are the specific challenges that I solve for people? So how do I make things different for them? Like if we were to look on paper, do you make them more money? Do you like make their life easier? Whatever it is. Then what internal shifts for people do I facilitate? So how do they actually feel? And then what narratives or stories do I help people rewrite? So this can be like beliefs, like, oh, I have to do it all, that no one likes my marketing, that, my content's terrible, that I'm not creative, right? Come up with 15 for each. I will be back with a fresh glass of water. Are we done? We good? A little bit more? A minute more? Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I have Caitlin, Kat, and Sarah on the screen, and I'm just going by like their little gestures. So if they're like, yeah, we're done, I'm so sorry, everyone. Um, okay, I'll give you a minute more. How are we going? We good? Yep. Okay, perfect. What is really nice about this is just something so good as well to reflect on. Especially if you ever feel like you get an incredible opportunity and you feel like that you have to like undersell yourself or like go against a standard that you have it to do it. And what I mean by that is you could get a client that you really, 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 really want to work with, but they just like don't have any budget and it's like 1/10 of what you would normally do, right? Sometimes you have to remember who the fuck you are and be like, that's hilarious that you want to pay me for that, but no, it's this. And it's so interesting that sometimes people will just challenge you and then you'll just hold a standard and they'll be like, yeah, okay. And you'll be like, shit. Were they just testing me? So coming up with stuff like this, even just reading it. And this can be something as well where I don't know if any of you do like client offboarding or if you sell something, if you ask like questions. We've got a feedback form. Testimonials are fantastic, but I love a feedback form. And you can ask people this, like, what challenge do I solve? What shifts do you have? Like, what stories do you now tell yourself? And this also can even influence like marketing and things that you put out there. So I'm about to raise my price, and so all this is relevant 100%. Anytime you feel like that you are on the cusp of something really scary, the best thing that you can do is remember like who the fuck you are. One thing that I have done is I would write a list every month of like cool things recap. And every time something really cool happened, I would like write it on that list. And anytime I had like a bit of a moment where it was a bit unstable, I would go and read that. I'm like, no, you're that fucking bitch. We're not doing that because you are her. So add to this list. I would love you to kind of just add more post this call because as always, more stuff will come up. All right, we've got, I think, this slide and then one more of questions, and then we're going to create some sexy little standards. So this is you. This is your signature. This is like what makes you different. What is something like your little secret sauce or something that you do that can't be copied, right? Just distinctly cannot be copied because it's so you. Do you have a distinct approach? That may be something that you got to think about a bit. You might be like, what is my distinct approach? Because quite often when this is so us, it's like we're pressed up against it because we live inside it. It's easy for people to look at us and tell us this, but for us, it's a little bit hard. How do I uniquely disrupt or elevate my industry? Something as well to think about, especially if you feel like that you've been really doing things from a place of, well, this is what I should be doing. What is a way that you could disrupt your industry? What is a way that you could elevate your industry, right? Think to that future self of the person that you would love to become in 2025. And I want you to think about that question. And then I want you to think about what new possibilities I make visible to people. This is going to take probably a little bit of thinking time because I know that I love a conceptual question. So I'm going to give you maybe 5 minutes to think about this. What you can do with that 5 minutes is if you do that quick enough, just go back and then answer the other questions that you may have skipped over. And yeah, 5 minutes. Perfect. We're done ish. Think about this. Think about it more. Take a screenshot and just like go through your day thinking about this. You could even ask people, okay? And then this one will be, oh, I think this is a nice one. I want you to think about your future. We brought this up a couple times. You're going to be in 2025, or maybe you're even thinking beyond that, okay? What do I hope is in store for me? What do you hope? What do you hope happens? Like, I love to get together with my friends and we do this thing where we will just kind of like go on these like little bullshit rampages where I'm like, John Hamm's gonna come up on the street and he's just gonna be like, you're the most attractive person that I've ever seen and I want to go like all this crap. Do that. Go on a bit of a rampage of everything that you hope happens. Who will you become? Okay. Who are you going to become? This can be something where you could be like, I am someone that charges full price. I am going to be the person that is fully booked out. I'm going to be the person that's really sure of myself. I'm going to be the person with boundaries. Okay. Whatever, like, however you interpret that question, perfect. And then what opportunities have I made available to myself? You may find there's a little bit of an overlap or thinking about this that different stuff comes up. So this could be something where it's like, what opportunities have I made available to myself? It could be that I am speaking in that sexy little group that I would love to contribute to. This could be something where it's like, I actually have a partnership with I don't know, a company. Why I like to think about this is I think a lot of the time we think, oh, that when we do something, it's like outside of ourselves and not that we actually can be the ones to facilitate this. So let's spend a couple of minutes doing this and then that's our last questions, okay? So if you need some time to just go back and then fill in the other ones, absolutely go for it. Why don't we do 3 minutes here? Okay, perfect. Are we good? Oh my God, I don't like how it does that. Why does it do that? All right. Um, these are hard. How fun is it though? The thing is, it's meant to just get your brain thinking in a slightly different way. Because what I don't want you to do is to kind of like, it's meant to be a bit of like circuit breaker, especially if you feel like that a lot of bullshit of other people has been like infiltrating you. And you do something and you're like, actually, I hate that. Why am I doing that? So this is just meant for you to, yeah, break your brain a little bit, come back to them, okay? I will post this. I'll actually send you the slides so you can go through, you can flick through, and if this is something you want to explore, go and do this. This could even be something that could be really fun to do every quarter. I will say too, the downside of growth, everyone wants growth, right? Everyone wants growth. Growth, you'll be revisiting this so regularly, okay? If you want fast growing, you will probably have to do this every single month because who you were at the start of the month is going to be very different to who you were at the end of the month, okay? So come back to this. Whenever I have a client and they've got shit happening in their business or they're not happy, right? How we feel is an incredible barometer of our business. Come back to this. So just think right now, like how you feel. Some of you are going to be like, oh my God, there's a lot. Like it's probably been a bit of a circuit breaker of how you're thinking. Some of you are going to be like, no, I feel fucking good. Like this has been like a declaration of who I am, how I'm incredible, what I'm great at. Some of you may realize that you are sensational, which you are, but how you have been showing up and how things have been happening in your business haven't really been honoring how incredible you are and the transformation that you provide. Now, why I like to do this and get you to think about that is if we were to set some standards, there's a chance that you're doing it in this real reactionary way. So what I mean by that is if you've had a bad morning or a bad weekend or last week some stuff happened, you may set a standard based on like responding and reacting to something that's happened instead of designing forward, right? So knowing all of this is going to give you some really good insights into then how we actually can create some standards in our business. This is a really, really simple process. This is as I said, we're kind of moving through things a bit fast. When I do this with clients, we usually take an hour just to answer these 5 questions and talk about them. And I'm going to break it down. I've got some examples for you. What are your standards in your personal life? Add any new. What are your standards in your business? Add any new. Where are we betraying our standards? I'm so aware that that sounds really dramatic. I can't think of another word. What is the barometer for this happening? How do we measure? And then what is the strategy moving forward? I'll go over the examples and I'll kind of talk about this further, and then we'll come back to this slide and we're going to work on this for a bit. So what I find with clients is usually the personal life is easier or the business is easier, right? You may be like, I'm really good at business, but I'm terrible at my personal life. We need to remember that your personal life supports your business and then vice versa. So there may be one and you're like, I'm really good at this. Maybe for you, you're like, I know what I should be doing and I have I've got no follow through. So then we look at like, where are we betraying them? So if we have a standard that I charge premium pricing, maybe we betray it because we continually discount, we continually have flash sales, we do stuff like that. What is the barometer for this happening? Maybe we check in Xero or we look in Kajabi and we look at how many discount codes we're using, right? Then what is the strategy moving forward? Maybe you need to just get up and just shake some shit off and be like, get over it, bitch. Just send the proposal, right? Maybe you have to have some stern words with yourself. So this is what this looks like. Some standards for your personal life could be being on time and honoring time, keeping my word, respecting my boundaries, going to Pilates 3 times a week. It could be only having people in my friendship group that respect me. It could be, having conversations with people where they build me up, that they don't cut me down. Now, you may find that you currently have none, right? There have been periods in my life where I'm like, oh my God, I've got none. Especially if I think about this with men. One of my standards that I date really sexy men. That's it, right? So this is where think forward. think into that future. You know who you want to be next year. What standards do they have? What are your standards in your business? Not being a personal Google. So if someone asks you something and like they can Google that, just be like, send them a Google link and be like, here you go. Google works. Big picture thinking. I'm never going to think small with clients. I'm always going to think about, you know, like the depths of their potential and how big their business can be. Being ethical with my sales process. It could be that a standard is that we don't discount. A standard is that we work with clients that align with our personal ethics. A standard could be that I am always going to recommend the best product or service to a client, even if it means that I lose money that I could be making. For example, I've had clients before who were like, I want to work with you for 3 months. I'm like, what transformation do you want? And I'm like, you know what? We probably could actually do this in a session. I think that you're fine to go this on your own. I've lost quite a bit of money from that. They then come back and they're like, thank you so much. You are right. This is exactly what I've needed. Then, where are we betraying our standards? Overloading my schedule because I'm really optimistic, following people up and reminding them of things, constantly letting people reschedule, not taking my supplements, by making my marketing speak to everyone, by not always honoring the price that's set. Then what is the barometer? So how do we measure this? Seeing how I feel at the end of the day. Am I energized? Am I depleted? This was a really big one for me, right? I have had some months in business, cash-wise, that are so low, right? So low. Do I care? No. I have had months that are lower than like when I first started. Like it's so funny that I could have earned the same, right? But the shit that I was dealing with made the money not worth it. Where now, if I love my week, I love my day, I love my clients. Yeah, we had like a lower cash month. Who cares? Everything else is amazing, right? So this is another thing as well. Don't just look to, I think a lot of people look to cash and how much they made in the week and the month. You may be thinking about things very differently when you really love the process and the business that you've had that's kind of delivered that money. Maybe the barometer is you just doing a check-in and feeling, do I actually currently feel the need to discount? And seeing like what that first response that you have is. Alice Nichols, I've worked with her. She did a blogging course and she got great content. I remember once she shared ages and ages ago, it was that your first response that you think isn't the important one. It's actually what you do next. Because what you think is usually like patterns and habits, and then it's what you do after that. Okay. So, you may find, oh, I want a discount. And then this is where you get to do a really nice little self-check. Okay. And then what is the strategy that you are going to do moving forward? So hire a coach that keeps me accountable in holding a standard. I swear to God, 50% of the work that I do with clients is just reminding them of who they are and the business that they want and keeping them accountable to what this looks like. It's maybe doing an end of week check-in or an end of day check-in. Having a client agreement in place. This could even be an energetic agreement. Here is what you can expect of me. Here is what I expect of you. Do you know what's so wonderful? Give that to a client at the start. And if they arc up about that, oh my gosh, red flag spotted before we've actually commenced anything. Maybe it's having difficult conversations that need to be had. Maybe it's sticking to your prices. Maybe it's having a price increase, okay? What I want you to do is, are you happy if I go back to this one here where you can see them all? Because we've run through some of the examples, so hopefully that makes sense. What you can do, and the easiest way to do this is to like think of, so you can create one. So think of like your personal life and your business, and then you'll basically answer these next 3 questions after that. So you can be like, what is the standard in my business? It could be, I charge the price that's on my website. Okay. Then go to the next one. Where do I betray that? Well, I feel the need to always have a fucking sale. I always want a discount. I always somehow miraculously have a coupon code. What is the barometer for this happening? Maybe you check and you see how many discounted codes you're doing. Maybe you actually go back through and you look at some of the conversations that you're like having. Okay. Maybe you have to do a check in and be like, do I feel the need to discount? Now, what is the strategy from that moving forward? So, what are you going to do if you feel the need to discount? Maybe the strategy is I am going to take a breath and I'm going to go and reread that list of the 3 questions about how you make people feel, the transformation, how you make their life better, and the narratives. I'm going to read that and I'm going to remember who I am. And if that client isn't happy with this because they're going to have to pay $50 more, they're not my client, and that's okay. And maybe you have to do that a couple times before that's like it's second nature for you, but that's going to be the strategy moving forward. So, what I would love for you to do, can we come up with at least 5 for our personal life and 5 for our business? I'm going to just show you 5 of mine that I think are fun. And what I would love for you to do is if you have a really good standard, I would love for you to like put it in the chat, because some of you may be like, oh, this is a bit tough, but you may see someone else like have something and you're like, oh my God, I love that. Like you feel that like in your body, you're like, yes, that's for me. So, some of my favorites, I put myself in rooms where I belong. I bring the energy that I wish to see, which is why I never complain about shit Facebook groups or crap parties, because I'm like, I bring myself and my hot aura. I pitch and send proposals with strong conviction, knowing the value in the work that I provide. I see myself on the same level as the people that I look up to because we're peer to peer. Put me at any table. Put me at a table with Alex Hormozy, I'm fine, okay? Think about that. So think about it from this place of not bare minimum. I want you to go into the future and I want you to design from that point. We are going to spend a little bit more time on this because I really want you to think about this. We're going to spend, why don't we say 10 minutes? All right. And you're thinking 5 of each. So 5 personal life, 5 business. And then you just answer these next 3 questions about each. So just write that in a little bit of a list. When you come up with a good standard for your personal life and business, if you feel like sharing, pop it in the chat, because I know that there are going to be some people who are like, I'm obsessed with that. I'm going to adopt that. How are we feeling? Do you feel good? Yeah. This will be something that you'll like add to continually. And it's something that it's like, even if we took an hour to just do this, what's really lovely is like now that you know that this is available to you and a new way of like thinking and doing business, is like anytime something really fun happens and you're like, oh, I love this, I'm making this like a new standard in my business. Another thing I forgot to say as well is like I like always expect unexpected and delightful things to happen to me every single day. So if someone buys me a cup of coffee, I'm like, oh my God, amazing. Of course this happens. Like this is a standard that I have like for myself. So anytime you have like cool stuff happen and you're like, oh, I love this, like, yes, universe, like more please, you can then make this like a standard where you're like, well, of course this happens. This is now a standard of mine. And then what you can also do is anytime, like, especially in the coming week or as you go through the day, if you're like, not feeling well. So for example, my sleep is just horrendous. Um, I I need to sleep better. My bedroom's a bit hot. I went and spent yesterday on ceiling fans, like and trades. It cost me like about $1,300, right? But I was like, no, that's important because my health is my number one priority. Because if I'm not healthy, I can't run my business. That's a standard that I have. And when you have that, it makes decisions really easy to make. So for me, spending that money on fans, I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense to me because this is a standard. And even though I'm like, would I rather have that money in my bank account? Yes. I know that that is really important to me and it makes the decision like a no-brainer. So you'll find, especially if you feel really indecisive around things and decisions, that your process for making them, it becomes so much like smoother and cleaner because you know who you are and you know who you want to be. And because of that, it's very easy for you to make decisions, which at the time may feel challenging. It may even feel something new. Like it could be after this call, you're like, you know what? I really need to get a personal trainer. My health is so important to me. But like, if I look back on the last week, there is no evidence of that. So I'm going to go and pay someone. We're going to train every Monday to keep me accountable, right? So it could be resulting in some stretchy things, and maybe for you actually like looking at how like things have been done and what you're going to need to do in the future. The most amazing thing as well, when you have a business, you basically have the ability to alchemize cash and put it out of the air, pull it out of the air, sorry. So if you're like, oh my gosh, this is important, but I don't really have the funds for that, incredible. This is where we get to look at our business. And that is what we're doing tomorrow. That's why we did this today, because then, you know, we create a business to support us, but sometimes it's really hard for us to hold things in our business if we don't know this. Like if you know that getting that personal trainer, which is, I don't even know how much they are, like you're spending $700 on PT a month, you're going to show up to your business in a different way and release that offer because you know that that's important to you and that's the standard, right? You know, having a 7-figure fucking business plan is amazing, but it means nothing if you don't actually have clarity on like why you're doing this and what it means for you when you do this. So continue to work through this. You've got, when I send this through, you'll have the examples as well. But thank you so much for everyone sharing this in here. We're almost done. We're almost done. And I'm so proud of myself because I've basically stayed on track with time. So I've just got some little closing reflections to just kind of summarize everything that we've covered. You know, standards are really a commitment to yourself and your rule book on how you live. If someone was to take every standard that you have, they would have your life. It may look a little bit different, but there were so many similarities, okay? So anytime you want a different life, I want you to come back to your standards and we're just going to either remember them. Maybe for you, it's just checking in and looking at that strategy, or it's creating new ones that really orient you to where you want to go. Anything and everything that is important to you in your life should have a standard. Everything. This is where if I have a client and they're like, oh, I want to be a 7-figure business owner, and they're like, I struggle with implementation. No, you fucking don't. You don't have a standard. Like, you're like, I'm just not good at this. Okay, cool. Like, what do you want me to do? I don't know what to say. For me, I'm always like, I'm going to challenge myself to think bigger. And sometimes I'm going to have to just call myself out on my own bullshit and be like, you can do better. A huge thing for me is sleep. I'm terrible at it. I held this story for such a long time that, oh, I'm an insomniac, which I am. I got the diagnosis, I got the medication, and I was like, nah, you know what? I can still do things that affirm that health is my number one priority. Half of that is just putting the fucking phone down. You know what I mean? So don't just like attach onto these stories like, this is my belief, this is my DNA. You can change this and you can be completely unrecognizable in such a short space of time. Speaking of that, I do have a podcast episode on this, which is called Become Unrecognizable. And I will say, my friend who was a psychologist listened to it and she was like, that advice is incredible. She's like, that is very psychologically sound advice. And I was like, never in my life would I think that someone would say that about the shit that leaves my mouth. So it has been approved by a psychologist. Another thing as well, and this is something to remember, standards transcend immediate results. I think sometimes we think that we can do something and we're going to get something, right? This used to be me. I have no patience. I just like everything now. If you hold that, it's already materialized, okay? The results are just going to take a little bit of time to catch up because like anything in life that is important and worthwhile, it's the process that takes you there, okay? If you want to be super strong and run marathons, you may have the same training plan as someone that's been running marathons for 10 years. It's just going to take a little bit of time for those results to catch up. Like you're already doing the work. All right. So if you desire to have different results, you just putting a standard in place has already brought them into this reality. We just need to wait a little bit longer for us to see the full effect and for time to pass and for that to happen. Okay. And then the last thing is, I think it's called Become Unrecognizable. I did it like it was probably like 4 episodes ago. So it's one of like the new ones, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago. And then the last thing is discipline is the highest form of self-care. You are not going to be able to do this all in a day, but one thing that I want you to think about, and when you write this down, I think a lot of the time we think of discipline in like what we put in our mouth and how we move our body. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about this being a really beautiful commitment to you and where you're going and honoring that. Because social media, our friends, everything, it's very noisy. And if we don't know who we are, we let everyone else's crap like on us. And sometimes it's about us being really, really disciplined in just being like, this is what I believe, this is my choice, and I'm just going to hold really strongly in that. And that is the highest form of self-care. All right. What I've done and why I was being super ambiguous at the start, because I'm clearly not a mysterious person, it's new for me. I don't really want to call it a present. I don't know why I was like, I've got a present for you. I am going to send this through. I have been using Claude, and as I said at the start of the call, you can use chat, you can use Claude. Both are free, so don't think that this is a paid resource. Just get a free plan, sign up, and it's Claude AI. I'll put this all in the email. What is really lovely, especially if you wrote this out on your computer, if not, I'm pretty sure you can actually take a photo and Claude can transcribe it and then you can do it. You're going to use these prompts to basically reflect back everything that you've written down. So you know how I asked you all those questions, then you had your standards. This is going to be reflected back to you. And what's wonderful about this is you then can look at this and be like, yeah, is this big enough for me? Or can I go further? Right? Because this is now going to be, it's like when you have a conversation with someone and you're like, I want you to tell me what you think I do. And then you hear it reflected back to you and you're either like, shit, yeah, that's amazing. Or you're like, no, you undersell me, right? I want you to look at this and be like, is this actually underselling myself? Or do I read this and I'm like, yeah, like this feels really good. I will say though, I tried this with me, like I put some content in and it came back like really good. But I think depending on how you write, and I love AI for this, sometimes you might be like, oh, that's a bit funny. Why I love Claude, if you haven't used Claude, Claude will actually give you some options. I think sometimes when it's overloaded, it reverts to like haiku or something where the premium one is what you want because it will say, hey, I've done this for you. Do you want me to go into more depth and write some more standards for you that I think could be really good based on what you've given me, right? So it will actually prompt you further compared to what chat does. And then all I want you to do with this is to just read it and have it reflected back to you. I have put a point at the bottom where it's like you can write a 4 paragraph summary that you can read. So what you can do post this is it's like, let's distill everything that we've done today into something that you can just look at, maybe print and put at your computer. I'll email that through. So if you're like, where do I get that? When this call downloads, I'll email it. So you've got a little bit more time if you want to go back and reflect on everything that we've covered. But before we wrap up, do we have any questions, any thoughts, anything where you're like, I actually need a little bit more clarity on this? I want to thank everyone. I feel like this is the most people that I've ever had on a call. So this is just so lovely. Thank you so much. I feel like it's such a chaotic time, and for carving out an hour and a half out of your day, like I'm so honored. So thank you for that. Oh, perfect. Amazing. Spend a bit more time on this today if you can, because tomorrow it's all about like your business and your business structure, and it's very hard to look at your business and create a plan if you don't know who you are, okay? Because you'll just adopt someone else's business model that may have a completely different endpoint to what you're actually wanting. If you've got any questions or anything post this, come and find me on Instagram at Professional Babe. But thank you so much. Take a little bit of time now to just have a bit of a like a release or a debrief or something. Have some water, walk around, and be like, woo. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone.